So, yeah.
Welcome to the Sleep Experience podcast, where we take a deep dive into the latest sleep hacks, gadgets, and strategies to skyrocket your productivity to new heights. Being a high performer is all about resting at 100%, so you can execute at 100%.
Side effects of medication, they weren't doing anything for me, so I felt like my back was up against the wall.
Hey, this is Riley, host of the Sleep for Side Hustlers podcast. Hey, this is Riley, host of the Sleep Experience podcast. At the Sleep Experience podcast, we interview health experts and teach our community how upgrading their sleep is the one thing that they need to unlock their biological code and maximize their performance in an effortless way by doing more with less. Do you want to become a productivity machine, have genius ideas automatically pop into your mind, stop feeling so stressed, build better relationships, and generate more income? Optimizing your deep sleep can do just that. Visit www.thesleepconsultant.com to learn more. My guest today is Molly Maloof. Molly is a physician entrepreneur on a mission to radically extend health span, maximize human potential, and redefine healthcare using medicine, technology, education, and media. Her fascination with technology permeates her concierge medical practice that is focused on providing personalized medicine to entrepreneurs, technology executives, investors, and celebrities. Working as an independent advisor to over 50 companies, being interviewed on the Financial Times, CBS News, National Geographic, Reuters, and more, as well as speaking at dozens of health conferences globally, Molly has many insights to becoming and feeling like your best self. Molly, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. And you're definitely well-versed with everything that, whether it's more energy, what is more stress resilience, and you've kind of formed it all into your book. And I'm sure that's kind of all the insights that you've learned over the years of doing this and helping people and just really diving into the biohacking space and everything else. So super excited to have you on. But one question I always like to ask my guests first is, what kind of got you into this whole biohacking wellness space? What did that journey look like for you?
Well, I started working in Silicon Valley about 10 years ago. And in that, work, I was basically interacting with a lot of technology guys and a lot of doctors. And the concept of health optimization was not really a thing as medicine until, really like 10 years ago. There's always been interest in health, and lifestyle medicine was a thing. Integrated medicine was a thing. But this idea of like N=1 medicine, the quantified self movement, it all kind of emerged from that. And then, Dave Asprey claims to, which I think is probably true, to have coined the term biohacking, but really it was people not getting served by the healthcare system and wanting to go around it to get what they wanted. And then what it became was a major movement around personalized health technologies and all of these companies coming out and saying, look, there's a lot of people who want this kind of medicine, who want this kind of care, and they can't get it. So how do we give it to them? And that's where a lot of these companies have emerged.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That one thing with personalized healthcare, everything is just a really cookie cutter approach. You go to your doctor, run like a business. Everybody knows that no matter what their journey is, it just goes down an endless hole of more pills, or you're just back to different specialists and you never get an answer until you get that personalized healthcare. And that usually seems to be the lucky charm that just opens this can of worms that just really changes people's lives. It's pretty fascinating. So you have this new book coming out now, called The Spark Factor, all about increasing energy, more resiliency, and just feeling better than ever. Could you talk about some of the core principles inside of that book to better health?
Well, the first one is, if you understand mitochondria, you'll understand a lot of metabolic disease, and you'll also understand a lot of mental health issues. As Christopher Palmer just wrote a book called Brain Energy, which is very much like this book, but really talking about the impact of mitochondria on mental health. But if you understand mitochondrial function and mitochondrial health, you'll understand why a lot of people are suffering from fatigue and energy deficiency. And it's really not rocket science, but it does require you to actually look at your lifestyle and create habits that optimize health consistently. So the big piece of this book is metabolism and monitoring your metabolism using things like blood sugar monitors and other devices. I love the Lumen by MetaFlow. So that you can actually have an idea of what's going on inside your body before it becomes full-blown disease. And then, movement is this incredible signal to create more energy. So when you move more, you get more energy. When you move less, you get less energy. So movement is important. Avoiding frailty through building muscle is really key.
Mm.
And then the really kind of unexpected part of the book that I think a lot of people don't know about is the role of connection in health.
Yeah.
So there's this really important opportunity for people to optimize their health just by optimizing their social networks.
Yeah.
And to me, this is such a frontier of medicine that's so overlooked, but it's the greatest factor we know in longevity and happiness. Yeah. So to me, it's just like, it's a no-brainer, like really work on your relationships if you want to have an optimal, if you want to have optimal health.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, like you go to the blue zones of the world and you see like, why do these people live so long? Yes, it's the diet and everything else they eat, but it's the community that they're part of. Like, I think in Japan, they're called the Ikinawa people or something. They just live to like past 100. It's just fascinating. It's fascinating. I think just everything you just said there, it kind of just, it speaks to how important community is for people. And like they're saying, like isolation and sitting is the sort of the new smoking that way. And if you can just be part of this community and just think of your hormones and everything else and your mind racing, if you don't have people to talk to as that outlet to it, it's just gonna, like on a biological level, it just does so many negative things. So I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah. Well, every one of the blue zones has community. So that's one thing they all in common. But interestingly, in Japan, they're actually having a big issue where people are living really long, but they're getting diabetes because their diets are changing.
Got it.
And so now they're getting on dialysis, and it's actually bankrupting their country's healthcare system.
Wow.
And so it's really important for people to realize that optimizing health is about really taking a holistic approach. Yeah. And I really talk a lot about stress, because that's something that's deeply overlooked by a lot of people, but it's really, something you can biohack. Yeah. And there's all sorts of ways to master stress. But the first step is you got to know where you're at in the stress response. So are you high cortisol? Are you low cortisol? Is it causing effects on your hormones? Is it affecting, because it can drop your sex hormones just being under too much stress.
For sure.
And then what are you going to do about it? If you notice that your stress is really causing problems, you got to change your lifestyle. So you have to slow down on the high intense exercise, do more restorative exercise, get more sleep, take a vacation. I did a lot of biohacking last year because I had a lot of stress. And it was I was very fortunate that in the past, I've burned out in the past. It's happened to me, and it can happen to anyone, and it can sneak up on you. But the way that you prevent it is by monitoring your stress warning signals and making sure that you really do course correct when things get really bad.
Yeah. And are those warning signals sort of subjective, like how you're feeling? And is the other part of that like objective? So like seeing the lab test markers are like, oh no, these are kind of going downhill.
It's always subjective and objective in my practice. So I like to measure everything, but I also like to gather qualitative markers. Yeah. So I'm looking at HRV, I'm looking at cortisol levels, looking at sex hormones, DHEA. Yeah. And with that, you can really get an idea of like where is a person at in their stress? But then you also just need to ask people like, okay, what are you feeling like when you wake up in the morning? Yeah. Are you like super duper stressed out, or are you feeling really good? Yeah. And that does make a difference.
Yeah. I think, all of that combined is so important. It's interesting. Like when I work with people too, I love taking that functional medicine approach of looking at their hormones, looking at their gut, looking at their brain neurotransmitters, their body's toxic load. And you just see all these hidden stressors that are inside of their body that are really just holding it back from their biggest potential. But they think they're going crazy because all they perceive is external stressors, deadlines, and different things they have to make. But when they sort of enter this new world of all these different things they can actually look at, then they kind of look back once they're on the other side of like, wow, I wish I did that so much sooner, especially if they're a high performer where they don't have a lot of hours available. It's maximizing the quality of those hours that you can recover. So you have this active recovery, and it just, it's sort of that like fast input, fast output.
Yeah, actually that's directly right.
Yeah. So when you're working with people, what's typically your model with them? Are you running different lab tests on them when it's more on the personalized side of things?
Yeah. I mean, I'm running lots of labs in every client. I mean, labs are a big part of the practice. So just really regularly monitoring people's labs and taking a look at, essentially every different body system. So hormones, immune markers, blood chemistry, micronutrients, minerals, oxidative stress markers, urine organic acids, hair minerals testing, hair metals testing, gut testing, stress hormones, sex hormones. And that's about it. But I do sometimes do other specialty tests like mold testing and allergy testing if needed.
Got it. And then I'm sure people just start like there's a range of people. Some people are experiencing more health related issues, but some people are just more in the optimization phase, and maybe they're a high performer and they're looking to get from like an 8 out of 10 up to a 10 out of 10 physically and mentally. What for the high performers, what are the biggest things you're usually seeing in their lab work? I'm assuming it's probably their hormone levels and their cortisol is tanked.
Can you say it one more time?
Yeah. So for the high performers that you typically work with,
Yeah.
what do you usually see in their lab work? Like I assume their hormone levels are pretty low, like their cortisol and things like that. What do you see any common themes for people like that?
Actually, it's very dependent on where they're at in their life and their stress cycle and how resilient they are.
Yeah.
So I've seen obviously burnout, but I've also seen high cortisol levels, but I've also seen people have pretty normal levels and actually very, very balanced, but they just want to be optimal. They want to get better and better. So, it's definitely not like super duper. It's not really consistent. It's like more like everybody responds to stress differently. And so you have to just figure out where they're at in the stress response. It's also very, very, very connected to psychological stress.
Yeah.
So, somebody who's having a really tough year financially is definitely going to have different effects in their body, but success can be stressful on people too.
Yeah.
So people forget about that. And that is in itself, that can cause problems too.
For sure. Yeah. And it's one thing I find really interesting too, is like people can get the external stress figured out and there's sort of an internal awareness you build with all those things. But if somebody is full of, toxins inside of their body, whether it's heavy metals, whether it's mold, they have gut parasites, gut candida, the list goes on of like people's allostatic load, the stress bucket can only be so full before they just start feeling, completely burnt out. And when they're in that state, it's like fighting this constant uphill battle. You add that on top of everything else you have to do. It's just, that's, that in my early journey, I speak sometimes diagnosed with Crohn's disease, just complete stress, the autoimmunity on top of it.
Yeah.
But running all those functional lab tests, it's like, well, no wonder I was feeling like this. It wasn't in my head the whole time. And then when you start optimizing everything, you rerun those lab tests, the markers look better. And like the new reality you live in is just so much more effortless. And like for each unit of output, it's just, it's like a clean car versus one that's just, clogged with dirty pipes and it burns the gas pretty badly. So it's very interesting. Once you learn about the body like a machine, you kind of gain appreciation for it and what we can actually do with it.
I'm curious, have you done any fasting for your Crohn's?
I did. Yeah. So in the early days, it worked out incredibly well.
Yeah.
I heard about it too from George St. Pierre, the UFC fighter. He had ulcerative colitis and he was doing a lot of the fasting and that helped him tremendously too. But, fasting, whether it's for intermittent fasting, like you fast for 16 hours or you do it for 2-3 days or sometimes longer, like there's just so many benefits, whether it's losing weight, the cellular autophagy and everything else that goes with it. But I can't say enough about it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I just know some people who really benefited significantly from it.
Yeah. So. Yeah. It's giving your body that break. It almost just resets the trigger with whether that's epigenetics, hard to say, but I mean, potentially just like giving your gut some time to heal. Yeah. Cause we're eating all the time. It's hard to do that. Absolutely. For sure. For the people you typically work with, let's say high performers, why is sleep so important? Because a lot of these high performers see sleep as a liability. Well, like, why would I sleep and be unconscious when I can sleep less, drink coffee? With that. So where do you sort of stand? What have you seen?
I mean, one of the things that I've seen is that I've had 2 clients who said they slept fine and had sleep apnea. Yeah. And frankly, I now no longer really believe anybody who says they don't have sleep apnea couldn't have it. Because I've seen it so many times now that I'm like, everyone should just download this app Drowsel and just do a home recording of your sleep and just see if you have any chances of having apnea. And I've decided I'm running every single client through this app now because I've missed sleep apnea because people said they didn't think they snored or they thought they slept fine. And it's surprising, but it really creeps up on people. Yeah. And it's far more common than I even realized. And it causes a lot of insulin resistance and mood issues. And you can be thin and have sleep apnea. Yeah. So it's a really big issue.
Interesting. Yeah. It's interesting you say that. Sleep apnea is one of the most undiagnosed things. And you're right. People don't realize they have it unless they have a partner beside them who tells them you should probably go get that checked out, or they actually
Yeah.
decide to go to study and it's diagnosed in some indirect way. But
Yep.
no, I'll definitely have to check out that app. I haven't heard of it before. That's a big one.
Yep.
Cool. What are your favorite biohacks? What are you doing today? What's sort of on the more advanced cutting edge side of things?
Oh, the more advanced stuff is really the fun stuff. I'm a big fan of peptides.
Nice.
So I'm like starting to experiment with peptides these days, although they can be really risky and tricky. So I really wouldn't recommend everybody go out and do this.
Yeah.
I'm like pretty comfortable with experimenting with my body, but I've been experimenting with MOTS-C, semaglutide, just microdoses of it instead of macrodoses. It's really cool stuff. Love that stuff.
Yeah.
And I also have been looking at what else? I've been doing NAD therapy and NAD patches.
Yep.
Specifically when you're really stressed out, it's a great boost of energy. It can really, transform your energy levels if you do it properly. And methylene blue. There's a company called Transcriptions, and they make methylene blue sublingually. I'm not really as much of a fan of putting it under my tongue. I just like to swallow it because I don't like my tongue turning blue. But methylene blue is a really good nootropic, and it's great for mitochondrial function.
Yeah.
And then what else is out there? There's like this company called Think Interfaces, and it's a really cool neurofeedback company that's like totally game changing. It's just like fixed my focus issues like overnight.
Amazing. And are they located at different locations throughout the USA?
No, they're very small. They're like, you can only get in Austin right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That Austin's for sure expanding with a lot of that health stuff too. So it's cool. Yeah. And neurofeedback as well. That's just expanding massively, especially in Canada right now as well. So
it's like, it feels like it's more than neurofeedback. It feels like I'm playing a video game and it's changing my brain.
Yeah.
And it's permanent, and it's like permanently changed my brain. So that's weird, and it's like you're working out your brain and it's increasing norepinephrine and dopamine, and then it stayed, and you're like, what? How does that work?
And
so it's weird.
And exactly. And you don't have to take a pill for it or anything. And I've heard
it's extremely disruptive and potentially dangerous for the founder. So trying to like you need to get a security team. This is too good.
Exactly. And like I've even heard with neurofeedback, it increases IQ by, I don't know if this is true, but 10, 15 points and sometimes even more for some people. I mean, for some brains that aren't functioning a little bit, suboptimal.
I think exercising our brains in the future is going to be just as normalized as exercising our bodies.
I think so.
And we just don't know how yet, but these technologies are coming.
Yeah, it's going to become normalized. It's going to be an exciting time. And that kind of rolls into our last question here. What excites you about the future of tech? Like, where do you see everything heading in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Ooh, well, I love the fact that let's see here. How do I describe this? There's so many things to talk about. Well, first off, continuous glucose monitors are going to go really direct to consumer, and hardware companies are figuring out how to make microneedles. That's something I worked on in the past. It didn't work, but another company did it. So that's really cool. Yeah. Because that's going to make it a lot easier for people to use these. It's a lot less scary if there's no needles involved.
Yeah.
And then, I just think that HRV monitoring is going to get smarter and smaller and more accurate. And it's really useful for stress. But, I'd say, I don't know, I'm really excited about the consumerization of a lot of products, not having to go through your doctor to get what you want, but just getting it through a company. So I'm working on something like that, but cool. I guess, I really think that there's going to be a time in our lifespan where there will be products developed that will pay you to be healthier. And I think that the healthcare system is about sickness billing. Yeah. And basically you pay it when you're sick. Yeah. But we need a healthcare system that we actually benefit from being healthy, you know? Yeah. And I think that's coming. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah. It's really exciting to have a model like that. It's going to, especially when you start gamifying things, giving people incentives, people are very, what's the word? They'll adapt and they'll mold to whatever that they're given. It's just that their current environment.
Yeah.
Just like you said. I mean, so if we can reverse that in the way to where it's actually promotion oriented instead of, them going down that downward spiral, it's just going to, it's going to change so many lives. We
just need to figure out what does it cost to pay
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And what does it cost? Like, what does disease cost?
Yeah.
And we just need to do a lot of math and figure out, okay, what are these numbers? Let's look at these numbers and let's figure out what does it cost to actually create a model that people can actually get paid to be healthier.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the future seems very bright. And I just talking with people like you all the time. I can't wait to see what the future holds. Really appreciate all the insights you share here today, Molly. Any last words of wisdom today before we close things off?
Nope, that's about it. I mean, I'd say that like sleep was the first thing I biohacked, and it's probably the thing I do best in my health. So if you're out there and listening to this, like, obviously there's a lot you can do for your metabolism and your movement, but if you sleep poorly, none of it's going to work. So definitely optimizing your circadian rhythms, your light and dark cycles, your, morning and evening routines, and just getting into a habit of really having consistency with your sleep schedule will make a big difference.
For sure. Yeah. Our body loves consistency. If people want to learn more about you and also about your book, where can they visit?
drmolly.co, and my Instagram is drmolly.co. So just go to my homepage, and there's you can see my books on the website as well.
Awesome.
Do you have all my links by chance?
I do. Yes. And we will put it all down in the show notes for people to access as well. So
awesome.
On the opening day. Cool
Amazing
stuff. Thanks again, Molly. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Riley.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you would like to learn more about how sleep can benefit your personal and business life, visit thesleepconsultant.com. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Sleep Experience podcast. We'll see you next time on next week's episode. Be sure to subscribe and follow us to get future updates on everything sleep, energy, focus, stress, and better performance.